we'll start off with, it has been, 15 years since that day in 2009.
15 and a half.
And this auditorium was filled all these years later. To what do you attribute that interest?
The enduring power of this story to inspire people, even people not involved with that flight or with aviation. My wife and I have pondered that question since the very beginning. At first we thought, it's going to be just 15 minutes and it's gone. We were completely wrong in every way. And not just in the U.S., around the globe. I mean, people in Nepal heard this story. I mean, it's incredible. I attribute it to the fact that it happened at a time in the world's history, the 2008-2009 financial meltdown, when it seemed to many as if everything was going wrong and no one could or would do anything right. Some people had begun to doubt human nature, wondering if it was really about self-interest and greed. And then along came this group of strangers in this airplane and the surrounding responders, first responders, who made it their mission in life that day to save every life. And at a time when we all needed it, it gave us hope. That's why I think people still remember this, and it's one of those events, like for us, the Kennedy assassination, we remember where we were when we heard about it. And it still touches and inspires people. I think because it's a potential that each of us has, to rise to the occasion, to save a life, to do the right thing.
I know it's a really unique experience, what you went through in 2009, but those sorts of experiences often have like a strangely universal lesson attached to them. So I'm wondering, whenever you tell the story of what you did in 2009, what's the lesson that you try to impart to those that are listening?
Well, first of all, it's I think our ability to do what we did had a history, and I think part of that history is one of innate curiosity, not only a willingness to learn, but a desire to learn, to be someone who was a continuous lifelong learner, constantly striving for excellence and trying to find purpose and meaning in what you do every day. And I think all those things together can add up to a life well lived. And that's what I feel like my profession has been a gift to give me, because it was so rewarding. I mean, flying an airplane, 1,000 miles with 200 people on board and taking them where they want to go or need to go, that has a beginning and middle and an end, and you accomplish a specific purpose. And I think, I think people when they find something that they like and they can create a purpose for their life, then it gives their life meaning. And so I think that's part of what the joy of life is all about.
I'm curious to know, how often do you think about that day?
I get frequent reminders, good reminders when people see me and recognize me or hear my voice. I'm told I have a unique voice, and people recognize my voice as much as my face. But I get frequent reminders about that, and so at least I'm glad it's a reminder of a good thing. If my name was Madoff, for example, I can't imagine how awful that would be. So fortunately, if I have to be the public face of an event, fortunately it was one that was good, and fortunately it was one in which everyone survived.
Did you?
Had even one person not survived, I would have considered it a tragic failure that I would have felt deeply for the rest of my life. And so I depended on my crew and on the first responders, the rescuers, and they all went to great lengths to make sure that everyone was accounted for.
Did you know when you were landing that plane that it was going to be okay?
I was confident. I never thought I was going to die that day. I was confident that I could find that way to solve the problems that we needed to solve. At the outset, I didn't know exactly every step of the way what I was going to do. I had a pretty good idea, but not everything. But I was confident that I could solve the problem. And I never wavered. I never thought I was going to die that day. I don't think Jeff Skiles, our first officer thought so either. But I never asked him that question. But we're probably two of the few people who did not think they were going to die that day, quite frankly. They felt great peril, and I don't blame them, especially when they found out we were going to be landing them in the water and not on the runway.
Post 2009, you've sort of been thrust into the culture spotlight. I heard a joke like a couple years ago that went, other than that, Mr. Sullenberger, how was the flight?
Oh yeah.
How does it feel? How has your relationship with fame and being that sort of American hero sort of evolved over the years?
Oh, that was also one of the difficult things. My wife and I think of the trauma in two parts. The trauma of the flight itself for everyone on the airplane and their families, and then the trauma in the immediate aftermath of this very sudden and intense global attention. That was difficult in its own way. And I'm a private person. I never sought this. And it was hard to learn very quickly a new way of living a new life as a public figure. But it's amazing what you can learn to do. And a lot of good has come from it, like this opportunity that I would never have had in my regular life.
Absolutely.
So it's a mixed blessing, but it was hard at first. It was really hard.
How did Purdue prepare you for that experience and your career?
Well, in two ways. First, I had gone as an undergraduate through the Air Force Academy, a 4-year bachelor's science degree in a very regimented military academy. All the great education and very, very wide, not just military, but engineering, the classics, languages, history, philosophy. But coming to Purdue at a civilian school, it's like going from the Air Force to the airline. From the military academy to a civilian university, different culture. And so it helps to broaden your perspective, realize there are a lot of other ways of living, and that it also reminded me that I should not be only concerned about what to do and how to do it, but I should remember why it's important that we do what we do. And I think the kind of work I did here at Purdue really helped me to inform me about why things are important in terms of human performance and all the other things, all the other protocols that we have in aviation that make it so safe.
I'm also interested in your time at Purdue because I know that you majored in industrial organizational psychology.
Yeah, it was. It was basically what they used to call, what I think they would call now, human factors of human performance. Yeah.
So how did you
industrial psychology?
Yeah. How did you transition into aviation and then later politics? How did you feel like it was a natural progression?
It was, and it, like I said in my talk, that I felt like I had that innate kind of connection to the importance of human performance and those kinds of things. But at the airline, I became a pioneer in changing the cockpit culture from one where they were not taught to build and lead a team, and they were acting as individuals, not always successfully, and how to take strangers and take these individuals and quickly form an effective crew who could have the same goals, who could share information, who could communicate well, who could manage workload, who could avoid distraction, all the essential human skills that it takes to be successful in an aircraft emergency or any emergency.
I'm curious to know, you touched on this in your talk out there, just what goes through your mind when you see the coverage of the increase in near misses and the safety issues? And are you concerned about the state of aviation safety right now?
First of all, you have to realize that safety is not a destination. It is instead a never-ending journey. And so we're never going to get good enough. It's always going to be, as we learn, we have an obligation to change and improve. So first of all, we always have things that are going to be reminders that we're not doing everything perfectly. We're not doing everything right. We haven't created the perfect flight yet. We haven't created the perfect checklist yet. So we need to pay attention to all these reminders, all these incidents, and investigate them so that we can prevent an occurrence that's worse. So it used to be that, many decades ago, we investigated accidents and tried to learn from accidents to prevent accidents. Well, then we began to investigate incidents that might have led to an accident, so we prevent incidents before they can even become an incident, much less an accident. And I think now we have to go one step further. We have to prevent any kind of disruption, and that takes a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot more resources. It's going to take a lot more training and attention to detail to make sure that we adhere to best practices on every hour of every flight, every day, every week, every month, every year, every decade for a decades-long career. And that's hard to do. It's hard to make sure that you do everything exactly right and that you're aware and alert and not complacent when we have made aviation so ultra-safe. So we're almost at the point now where we're the victims of our own success. It seems like it's so ultra-safe, and it is, that we have sometimes relax and not be as vigilant as we really need to be. We have to remember that it hasn't happened yet, but it may on the next flight, or the next week, or the next month. And we have to be alert and ready to stop it before it. We have to look for the little cues, the links in the causal chain that might lead to a bad outcome, and be aware when these links in this chain are lining up, and stop them, break that chain before they can lead to harm.
What are the hurdles there? What are the roadblocks there?
Human nature. I mean, it's hard to be that vigilant all the time. You have to remember why. You have to keep reminding yourself that as safe as we have made this, why we have to be so alert and vigilant, because there's so much at stake. Because as commonplace and routine as aviation has become, and as much as we take it for granted, we can't forget what we're really doing when we go together in an airliner, is we are pushing a tube filled with people through the upper atmosphere 7 or 8 miles above the earth at 80% of the speed of sound in a hostile environment with outside air pressure 1/4 that at the surface and outside temperatures to -70, and we must return it safely to the surface every single time. In this country alone, 28,000 times a day, 10.2 million times a year. We make it look easy, but it's not. It's hard. It's hard to do it the right way on every single flight, every day.
Well, that's inspirational. What do you feel like aviation schools around the country maybe don't put enough of an emphasis on when it comes to, preparing their students, whether it's mentally or just technically?
That this is not just a job. It's not even just a profession. This has to be a calling. I don't want somebody flying my airplane who's there for the paycheck. That's not good enough. I want somebody who's there who can't think of doing anything else, who just loves being the best pilot they can be, the most complete, the most accurate, the most skillful, the most knowledgeable pilots they can be, and is trying to make every flight better than the previous one.
And going off of that, what advice would you have for the students?
Be all in. I mean, read everything you can about it. Do your homework. Go out and practice, and always try to make the next flight better than the previous one. Always try to learn something on every flight, and file that away for future use.
You mentioned if you were Boeing, you'd clear the deck.
Yeah, the people who got them there probably shouldn't be there. We need people there who are going to get them out of it, and that's not the people who got them in it.
How long of a journey do you think that will be?
Years. Who knows?
Just one more
You had some striking comments regarding your thoughts on Boeing. It's pretty clear that you feel pretty passionate about that situation.
Yeah, it was unnecessary. It was predictable. It just, they lost their way. They valued the absolute wrong things for too long, and it bit them. And they ruined the preeminent aviation company of the United States, of the world. It is no longer.
What do you attribute that grade to?
Leadership who had no values. I'll tell you a quick anecdote. So this flight in 2009 happened on Thursday afternoon. It was not until Saturday night I finally had a chance to fly home. And I had a colleague of mine pick me up at the airport and drive me back to the house. And as I was walking up the jetway after having arrived at my home airport, one of the passenger service agents recognized me. They all saw that. They knew I was on the plane and they greeted me. It was a very nice, warm welcome. And one of them handed me the envelope, and I kept walking. And it wasn't until I got in the car and was being driven home, I opened it, and it was a greeting card. And inside was a very simple message. It said, "When your values are clear, your choices are easy." So I thought that was good advice then. I think it's good advice now.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
Sure.